World News Weekend Review, October 5th, 2025. Welcome back to Hidden Source News. This week, we're cutting through the noise with the top trending stories across politics, world news, tech, medical, science, sports, and entertainment. Fast-paced, no nonsense, and full of the detail your audience needs to stay ahead. As always, please subscribe to the channel to help us grow our audience. And now let's go. Political news. Government shutdown, stalemate, and frozen funds. Congress is deadlocked, and the partial U.S. government shutdown is dragging into fourth day as Senate votes to end the stoppage continue to fall short. The White House has doubled down by freezing billions in federal funds targeted at Democratic-led states and projects, turning the shutdown into a leverage tool and widening partisan rancor. Centrist Republicans are publicly warning that this hardline approach risks long-term political damage and could undermine the GOP's ability to govern. The impasse has real, near-term impacts. Services stall, hundreds of thousands of federal workers face uncertainty, and critical programs are paused until a deal is found. House leadership strategy and pressure points. House Speaker Mike Johnson has rallied House Republicans around a strategy of holding firm, canceling votes, and setting a late October calendar that he casts as a pressure play on Democrats. The messaging from GOP leaders frames the shutdown as a negotiation tactic, while Democratic leaders demand written commitments on health subsidy protections before reopening funding talks. That tug of war means both sides are laying political groundwork for blame if the shutdown persists, and it raises the stakes for services like military pay and air traffic operations as calendar deadlines approach. Federal deployments and local pushback, National Guard, and more. This week saw high-profile federal moves, authorization of National Guard or federal deployments to U.S. cities, notably Chicago, as the administration cited unrest and security concerns, a move that has drawn legal and political pushback. In Oregon and other localities, courts and officials are resisting federalized deployments, arguing they inflame tensions rather than solve root problems, producing a national debate over federal force inside American cities. The battles over deployment highlight how domestic security, law enforcement policy, and politics are colliding right now. Intrigue on foreign policy posture toward China and Taiwan. Beyond domestic fights, a faction of U.S. senators is pushing for a tougher stance on China, including increased pressure over Taiwan, signaling growing bipartisan concern about the Indo-Pacific balance. Those moves complicate the administration's global posture, just as the U.S. juggles other foreign crises, and they could accelerate arms sales, diplomatic initiatives, or sanctions if momentum builds in Congress. Watch this space. Foreign policy hawks are trying to convert rhetorical pressure into concrete steps. World news. Breakthrough ceasefire talks in the Israel-Gaza conflict, fragile progress. This week brought a dramatic, if fragile, diplomatic moment. U.S.-led peace proposals have reportedly advanced enough for Israel and Hamas to signal partial acceptance and for negotiators to head to Cairo. Officials say an initial withdrawal line and hostage exchange framework are on the table, raising hopes for an immediate, but conditional, ceasefire and phased hostage releases. On the ground, though, violence continued in places, underscoring how fragile any deal remains and how quickly talks can unravel without strict guarantees and inspections. The humanitarian stakes are huge. Displaced populations and civilian casualties mean that any lull in fighting must translate quickly into aid and access, or the pause will feel hollow. Japan's political earthquake, a new LDP leader poised to lead. Japan's ruling party selected a hardline conservative as its new leader this week, positioning her to become the country's first female prime minister amid political turbulence at home. Her platform emphasizes national security, a Japan-first economic posture, and fast policy moves to try to arrest declining public confidence in the party. Observers are watching how her approach will affect relations with neighbors, especially China and South Korea, and whether domestic priorities like inflation and living costs get traction under new leadership. The selection marks an important political milestone and poses immediate diplomatic questions. Seismic event in Iran, regional reaction and verification. A magnitude 5.1 earthquake struck central Iran earlier in the week, centered near the Isfahan and Ardistan area. Seismologists and several agencies reported the event, and regional authorities conducted rapid assessments. The tremor produced aftershock concerns, but, according to initial reports, limited structural damage and no confirmed major casualties. Nonetheless, it briefly raised alarms about infrastructure resilience in a seismically active region. Natural disasters like this also ripple into geopolitics. humanitarian needs, energy infrastructure risks, and domestic political responses can all be affected if further quakes or damage emerge. Tech news. Major cyber attack disrupts supply chains, beverages, and beyond. A high-impact cyber attack that hit a major Japanese beverage company and supply chain partners made headlines after reports of beer shortages and distribution disruptions in restaurants and retail. The incident highlights the fragility of modern supply chains, where IT outages cascade quickly into physical shortages, and it's a fresh reminder that cyber resilience must be part of corporate risk planning. Analysts say this will accelerate investment in backup systems, segmentation of operational networks, and stricter vendor controls across industries. Regulatory pressure on social platforms. TikTok registration suspended in Indonesia. Countries continue to press tech platforms on data sovereignty and compliance. Indonesia this week suspended TikTok account registrations, citing data sharing and regulatory concerns, reflecting a broader global push for stronger local control over user data. Governments are increasingly demanding onshore data storage, stricter moderation, or transparency measures, forcing platforms to juggle global product consistency against local legal realities. Expect more regional divergences in how apps operate and in what features are permitted. All solid-state battery research pushes forward. Researchers published promising advances in solid-state battery materials, argyrodite densification and dendrite suppression, bringing the industry a step closer to safer, higher-energy storage that could accelerate electric vehicle adoption and grid storage deployments. These materials improvements address one of the biggest obstacles, lithium metal dendrite formation, that has held back commercial solid-state cells. While commercialization still faces manufacturing scale-up hurdles, the pace of materials breakthroughs this year is notable and could spark renewed industrial investment. AI audio and synthetic voice realism goes mainstream. This week, several outlets highlighted how AI-generated voices are now often indistinguishable from real human voices, raising both creative opportunities and ethical headaches for creators, media companies, and regulators. The tech enables new content formats and accessibility tools, but also heightens risks of deepfake audio used in fraud, misinformation, or intellectual property disputes. Industry and policymakers are already racing to craft watermarking, provenance, and disclosure standards to preserve trust while allowing innovation. Medical news. Obesity, new mechanism linked to Alzheimer's progression. Researchers reported evidence that tiny signaling vesicles from fat tissue can accelerate Alzheimer's-related processes, giving a plausible biological pathway linking obesity to cognitive decline. This opens potential therapeutic angles, like blocking those vesicle signals, and really strengthens prevention messaging. Weight and metabolic health may be modifiable risk factors for neurodegeneration. Clinically, the result doesn't mean immediate cures, but it does change where researchers look for interventions and biomarkers. Surge in use of GLP-1 and other weight loss drugs among surgical patients. New studies found a growing proportion of bariatric and metabolic surgery patients are using GLP-1 receptor agonists and other pharmacotherapies either before or after procedures, changing surgical planning and outcomes. That evolution raises questions for clinicians: how drugs alter anatomy-driven weight loss expectations, how to time surgery versus medication, and how to counsel patients on combined approaches. Health systems are updating guidance and payer policies as evidence accumulates. Gene editing treatments show promise for rare nerve disorders. Early clinical reports this week described stabilization of neuropathy scores after an experimental gene editing therapy for a rare inherited nerve disease, a sign that precision genetic medicine is moving from concept to clinic for previously untreatable disorders. While sample sizes are small and follow-up is limited, the clinical signals are encouraging and will justify larger trials and regulatory attention. For patients with rare diseases, these incremental advances are significant steps toward durable interventions. Reassessment of aspirin use and population-level guidance. Large new assessments suggest routine aspirin use in many middle-aged adults may be unnecessary or harmful without clear cardiovascular indications, catalyzing guideline reviews and clinical discussions about individualized risk-benefit balancing. Doctors are once again emphasizing shared decision-making. Age, bleeding risk, and alternative prevention strategies matter. Expect updates in primary care algorithms and preventive care messaging. Science news. Ancient viral DNA helps embryos develop, surprising new role for old viruses. A major paper and accompanying coverage highlighted that ancient viral DNA embedded in our genomes contributes to early human embryo development, revealing how once parasitic sequences have been repurposed by evolution. That work deepens our understanding of developmental biology and may help explain certain reproductive failures or variation in early development. It's an elegant example of how evolutionary junk can acquire crucial biological roles over millions of years. Ocean circulation shifts, North Atlantic currents behaving strangely. Oceanographers flagged unusual behavior in a massive rotating system of North Atlantic currents, changes that could be early warnings about broader ocean circulation tipping points with climate implications. Because these currents regulate heat transport and weather patterns across the Atlantic and into Europe and North America, any long-term change would have major ecological and socio-economic consequences. Scientists caution that more monitoring is needed to distinguish short-term variability from persistent weakening. DNA circuits and heat-powered molecular storage. Researchers demonstrated that DNA-based circuits can store data and be powered by heat differentials, an inventive step toward molecular information systems and exotic computing architectures. While not consumer-ready by any means, the advance points to future ultra-dense storage platforms and bio-integrated computing that could change how data is archived at extreme scales. It's a great look-forward story for tech-savvy audiences interested in where computing might ultimately go. Paleontology. Dinosaur diets decode feeding habits. New analyses of dinosaur tooth enamel and wear patterns suggest some species were selective in what plant parts they ate, adding nuance to our picture of ancient ecosystems. Those dietary preferences influence reconstructions of food webs, habitat preferences, and competitive interactions, and help model how Mesozoic ecosystems responded to environmental change. Small details in teeth keep rewriting the big picture of prehistoric life. Sports news. Arsenal top of the Premier League after key wins. Arsenal leapfrogged rivals to sit top of the Premier League this week, following a critical domestic win and favorable results elsewhere, giving manager Mikel Arteta momentum in his 300th game in charge. The jump to first spot reshapes early season title narratives and raises questions about squad depth as Europe and domestic cups intensify. Injuries to key players, notably midfield concerns reported after the match, will be watched closely as the campaign stretches on. College football. TCU's big weekend and high-profile returns. TCU posted a landmark road win, a 35-21 result, highlighted by multiple touchdowns from the offense that dominated headlines, and the game carried extra attention because of Deion Sanders' return to Fort Worth. Big-name returns, upset results, and player performances this weekend are already reshaping rankings and playoff conversations. The early season volatility means every marquee matchup matters more than ever. WNBA, NBA headlines and player storylines. This week also saw player-driven headlines, from breakout performances to off-court news, that are moving narratives across women's and men's pro basketball. Teams are reacting quickly to injuries and form, and several franchises are already adjusting rotations as coaches test lineups ahead of the busiest stretch of the season. Those rotation gambits will be tournament deciders months from now. Transfer windows and managerial pressure in soccer. Across Europe, a combination of tactical reshuffles, late summer transfers, and managerial scrutiny is fueling intense early season talk. Clubs that fail to adapt in the next few weeks risk sliding down tables quickly. Fans and analysts are scrutinizing signings and youth promotions alike as pundits judge which clubs planned best. Expect more managerial headlines if short-term form doesn't improve. Entertainment news. Streaming and prestige TV big October premieres. October's streaming calendar is stacked. High-profile returns and new prestige series are hitting platforms, notably a season return for a major show this month, and critics and viewers are already weighing in on which series will break out. High-visibility launches mean buzz, social chatter, and awards season positioning start now. Promoting heavy early viewership tests the staying power of these programs. For creators, this period is about hooking audiences in episode 1 and building word of mouth, celebrity pop culture moments, and late-night appearances. Big-name appearances and late-night promotional blocks, including A-list musicians and actors, are driving cultural moments that cross over into streaming metrics and music or box office sales. These appearances create immediate social spikes, trending clips, streaming boosts, and ticketing interest, and they're being used strategically to convert promotion into measurable engagement. Expect tailored promotional runs to remain a core part of release strategies. Documentary and legacy news. big names in science and culture. This week's cultural conversations also took on a documentary and legacy tone, with major obituaries, archival releases, and renewed interest in the work of celebrated scientists and cultural figures. Streaming platforms are repackaging legacy content as fresh viewing. Those packages often boost younger viewers' discovery of older work and shape upcoming biopic or doc-series projects. The cycle of discovery, nostalgia, and production is in full swing. Celebrity-driven controversies and industry gossip. Tabloid and trade press continue to lead with high-profile controversies and contract disputes, which have immediate knock-on effects. Production delays, PR playbooks, and legal headaches for studios or agencies. These stories drive short-term engagement and sometimes long-term reputation fallout, and they influence how studios negotiate future talent deals. Keep an eye on how studios respond publicly. Crisis handling shapes audience sentiment quickly. That's it for the news. As always, keep informed with us, and please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more content. Stay safe and have a great week.